Call this meeting to order. Pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, notice is hereby given that this workshop, special call meeting is going to be held here right now at the Emergency Operations Center located at 401 Deputy Miller Drive, and we have one item on the agenda. So after calling this meeting to order, I will ask the Reverend Mike McMahon to give us our invocation.
Father, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you as you speak through me. I praise you, Father, and thank you for the love that we enjoy as your kids. And I pray that during this time, this afternoon, that the information, the topics that are discussed will be discussed openly, honestly, and completely. And I thank you for the minds that you brought together to focus on this subject. Thank you for those who are willing to take the time and the effort to work with and work for Hood County. Lord, we praise you for that. Thank you for it. And we thank you for your love and for your grace. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. You lead us in the pledge.
Please join me in the pledge of the United States.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Welcome to this workshop, ladies and gentlemen. We do have a quorum here today. The judge and Commissioner Wilson are at a conference. According to our rules of decorum, number 9, from time to time the Commissioners Court shall conduct a meeting like this. The rules of procedure and decorum shall be used at those meetings. So if anyone wishes to speak on this one agenda item, please fill out a form. Give you a minute or two to do that. If nobody else wants to fill out a form, then I'll ask for speakers in the order that they were presented to me. Anybody else need to fill out a form? Okay. So the agenda item is discuss matters related to the 2023-24 budget. We may adjourn into executive session as authorized by the Texas Government Code, Section 551.074, Personnel Matters. The first numbered speaker is Nate Criswell.
Judge Pro Tem, would you like us to stand or sit for speaking?
I'm sorry?
Never mind. Thank you all for calling this meeting. I think it was Ms. Samuelson that did so. I think it shows a commitment to getting the work done for the people and not leaving it up to the bureaucrats to tell us what they need. Y'all are the people's representatives, and I appreciate you being here today. Thank you.
Speaker number 2, Tina Brown.
I'd just like to know why this was called and not changed when it was found out that 2 of your members couldn't be here to discuss a very important budget. And I hope that you will, if you go into executive session to talk about salaries, that you will take the people at the lower end of the pay scale and give them more than the people at the top end. I'm not going to get an answer.
I'll address that one.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Number 3, Elizabeth Mercer.
Yeah, good afternoon. My hope is as you begin to do this budget, that you actually take a really long look at how every department is being managed. Take a look at it, make sure there's no waste, because there's a lot on the line. We need peace officers. You know, you guys are discussing the validity of a jail. You know, they're asking for ADAs. So, you know, it's super important, and especially for somebody with a corporate background, because I've worked for 2 Fortune 500 companies. You have to be able to transition software. You have to be able to not create hostile work environments. You have to be able to actually make sure that you are getting the biggest bang for every single buck, and it's even more important than the private sector. So how would you do that? That you will take a long, hard look at it, because you're making decisions about people's lives, and you're making decisions about how well the county functions.
Thank
That's
you.
it.
Thank you for your input. I guess, I don't know if we need this on or not. Okay, the next speaker, number 4, is Ms. Faye Lannon.
You all three know that I have supported all of you in former elections, and I want to support you again, but I am so disappointed that y'all have called this meeting without the 2 other members of the council, commissioner here. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Landon. Last speaker, Katie Lang.
I just want to thank you for having this meeting to continue to discuss the budget and important items that might need to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, the only comment I can make about that is that this is an informational workshop only, and the judge and Mr. Wilson have gone to work on their hours that are needed. So it just happens it worked out this way. And so at this juncture, I'm just going to hand it over to Commissioner Samuelson, and we'll take it from there. Maybe she can answer your questions.
Yeah, so I'll attempt to. So, as you all know, I have, similar to Ms. Mercer, lots of years in corporate, worked on many, many budgets. And I know that I'm very deadline oriented. I know there's a deadline. I know there's a lot of work to do. So as you've seen through the last 6-7 months that I've been commissioner, I'm the one that's keeping the ball rolling on several different issues, whether it be the jail. Many of you that are on the back row know that I've met with you and tried to keep things moving, and that's my DNA. I'm schedule oriented, I'm goal oriented. I know we have a limited amount of time. As Ms. Mercer said, we have a lot of work to do still. I mean, we've had some very productive sessions, but we still have a lot of work to do, and we have a very short time frame. We have to have a proposed budget very soon. So, and we also have a schedule that we work through during the week. Today at noon was the deadline for putting items on the next agenda. So I didn't want to impact any of my fellow commissioners' time on their time on getting what they needed to put something on the agenda. So then the agenda for the next court comes out around noon tomorrow. So I didn't want to impact their time for getting prepared for Tuesday's agenda. So that left today afternoon and tomorrow morning. When I checked with Miss Kidd, she was to be available today, but she's gone home sick. So I said, okay, well, we'll do it Wednesday. Asked our court coordinator to see if that was a good time. She was able to get a quorum, and so here we are. There's no decisions that will be made today. This is just continuing discussion. I do have some things that I want to talk about because there's a lot of things that we need to talk about and make sure that we're focusing the taxpayers' money on the right things. And I hope that answered your questions. That's it.
Well, I just want to throw in that today at 5 o'clock, the appraisal district's having their budget meeting as well. And so we're kind of sandwiching in. I plan to attend that meeting myself. There's some issues going on with the appraisal district, as you may or may not know. They're talking about wanting to build a $6.5 million facility. They want to add more bodies in there. When the interim director, Mr. Richard Petrie, has already said that they're not our appraisal district per appraiser is doing 3,500 appraisals a year. In Abilene, his appraisers were doing 9,000 per year. So there's something going on there that needs to be looked at as well. So just to let you know, if you like coming to meetings, there's one over at the appraisal district at 5. But I'm just, when the judge is absent, as a senior member, I'm the presiding officer. So we've got the meeting going, and I invite you, Ms. Samuelson, to start with whatever
Okay.
budget item that you're interested in looking at?
Well, some of the things we kind of generally talked about, but we haven't really drilled in. Like one is about, is Drew here? Okay, the IT policy. We talked about that IT funding for software and hardware comes out of the IT budget, but sometimes it doesn't. So I've talked to a couple of other counties, and they actually have a policy, the two that I talked to, that have a policy that says, you know, IT software and hardware come out of the IT budget. And then, you know, the judge is the only one who can sign a contract. So we have a control there. Those of you who are accountants or know that there's, you know, controls around certain financial things. Some of signing a contract is a control. So he's the only one that can sign a contract, and it's during court. So we have a mechanism of control there where if something comes up on the agenda and it's for software or hardware, if we do decide to put a policy in place, we can say, okay, Drew, do you know about this? Is it in your budget? And at that point in time, it either, you know, depending on what the discussion is, it either may or may not get funded. But we do have a mechanism to ensure that the policy is followed if we were to decide that we did want to have a policy like that. So, I don't know.
That, I can see some value in either way being done, you know, putting it into the department's budget. Is this a, you know, is this a relevant, still in use? Is there a better software out there to use? I can also see it being in the IT budget as a general oversight. How did it come to this? Does anybody know that? I mean,
I could touch on it maybe a little bit.
Okay.
Of course, Miss Kidd isn't here to really kind of help. So my understanding, of course, this happened with my predecessor, that I believe there was some kind of small furniture fund or something like that that used to be in everyone individual's department budgets. And there was like a small, I wouldn't say technology fund, but like small equipment fund, I believe it was called. That was also in every individual department's. And so basically over the years, you know, everyone was saying, hey, we need IT, we give them IT. But I guess they would start using it for other things or other IT things. And so I got with Miss Kidd over the past few years, and we've been kind of consolidating, and I guess she's been kind of decreasing, or they got rid of that line and then they kind of moved it all into mine. Like I said, I know there was a lot of purchasing issues with it originally, and I believe that was before Glenn's time too, to the last purchasing agent. And so just over the years, we've started consolidating it really into my budget. Because even from our standpoint, there was a lot of like, departments would buy stuff and then they'd be like, hey, support this. What is this? We didn't even know about it. Again, we could support a lot of things, but it's hard to support just random stuff that they would buy and then be like, make this work. Well, it doesn't work. You should have bought this. Well, I didn't know that. Well, of course, that's what we're here. We're here to help. Again, that's kind of my understanding of it. And so over the years, we've just been consolidating. Now, there are still things that slip by. You know, departments will buy software or stuff like that and then be like, well, did you know about this? Had no idea. And so that's kind of where we're at right now with it.
Because generally when you buy software, you buy it with a maintenance agreement, which means that you're buying it, but you're also committing yourself to pay payments for years to come. And so without knowing that, and then is the expectation that all the maintenance comes out of the IT budget, well then he needs to know about it in the beginning.
Yes, there's a lot of that as well. That there would be like, they'd just throw it over here and we would look at this and go, well, what is this? We had no idea. It was never budgeted. But of course, we made things work over the years and it's like, okay, we'll cover it.
And it also could be that we're duplicating software, that there's one department is purchasing something that another department doesn't know about but could use, and then they purchase it too. So there's pros and cons to both. I just think right now we're kind of in a mishmash. We sometimes say all IT software comes out of Drew's budget, but sometimes we don't, so.
I think it'd be a lot easier from a management perspective as far as to know what exactly we're paying for. Because again, there's, like you said, there are times where people will be like, hey, Adobe's a great one. Hey, we need some kind of an Adobe reader. Well, we pay for Foxit, which is a cheaper version essentially, or a knockoff of Adobe. But we pay for an enterprise license, so we can get you that. And then there are departments like, well, no, we want Adobe Pro, which costs $700 a piece, a license. Again, well, we pay for this, and they come to find out or come up with money to pay for their own software. Again, it's really, so half the time we don't know what software we're dealing with because, again, the license was paid out of a department years ago that they're still running. Again, from just like an overall management perspective, I think it'd be fairly good. At least you can pinpoint in our budget, like, okay, hey, look, this is where this is coming from. Not why is this over here and why is this over here, and then trying to understand why, you know, partial funding's here, other partials here, et cetera, et cetera. So again, it's been a battle over the years. I think we've gotten a lot better with the departments, honestly. But it's just a thing, and I think you've seen that out of a few departments. They're like, well, why are you paying for this? This should be here.
Well, that's how this came.
And it's kind of started it that way.
Right, that's how I realized it or came to the top of my mind was, you know, when we went to all the different departments to talk about budget issues and go through their budget, and then, you know, the IT department was one of the ones that I sat with, and I asked him, how did you come up with this number that's in your contract services and your hardware software? Well, because he's not aware of all of the hardware software that he's going to be responsible for paying maintenance on, because he isn't the one that's bringing it to be purchased. It was really hard for him to tell me what that number was. Here's how I came up with this number. Here's the backup for it. I mean, you do have now a spreadsheet.
Yes, we've been keeping a spreadsheet, and of course, like you've asked, I brought this. But this, of course, like I said, I wasn't able to update it. This was, you know, the past until what, June, I believe.
Yeah.
June, when I brought this spreadsheet up. But this was up to date until June.
So this gives us
And I kind of broke it down again. I presented this to the court. It kind of breaks down everything as like departments, generalized like which departments use what software, et cetera, the cost, at both contract services account and then the hardware software line account that I have. So you can just kind of go through there and see all the different departments, what they use, what they don't do, et cetera. I try to give like a generalization of like what the software does as well. Like I said, I asked Commissioner Samuelson when she called like an hour ago, I was like, I can update it or try to update it, but you know, to make it at least current, because again, that goes until I believe June, when we had the workshop.
Do you have an extra copy for me?
I don't, but I can get you one.
Okay, yeah, I'll need that, thank you.
Yeah,
Yes,
I knew
ma'am.
that you had given this to us during another budget workshop. I just wanted to make
Yep.
sure that we had it. for
Yeah,
today.
and like I said, I can go back once we're done here. I'll go and update it, at least bring it current to at least now, because there has been quite significant purchases, you know, since what you're looking at least money spent until today.
And that will, so what we know about this is what's currently coming out of your budget that you're
Yes.
aware of. But
Yes.
if someone were to ask us, what is the total amount of spend that Hood County spends on hardware and software? We couldn't say this. We would have to go
No.
through probably every department budget and pull out
Yes.
hardware and software. So, I don't know, it's an idea. You know, that's why I just brought it up in the workshop. I don't know if anyone else thinks it's a good idea or a bad idea or wants to talk about writing a policy or not, but that's why I'm asking.
Do we have any kind of policy right now for the IT? None? Zero?
Not
In our disjointed employees, our disjointed county policy manual?
I have brought it up. I mean, myself and Becky have gotten with like Melissa and purchasing and kind of brought it up. And Melissa always kind of erred on the side of elected officials do whatever anyway. So even if we had some kind of policy, it would be up for the court to enforce that. And again, it's been a battle over the years. So it's something the court would need to decide, and if you do decide, actually stick to it. But either way, it doesn't bother me.
And we have a method to stick to it because purchases all have to come before court to be approved.
Absolutely.
So,
Do you have any input, Commissioner?
Well, you know, that makes sense, that if you've got redundant systems, you know, and Foxit and Adobe is a real good example of why that would need to be in one centralized place. That's
Well, again, and I use that as a good example because, again, that was the hardest one with the departments using one software, and then when you go out to try to find a cheaper, because again, $700 a license adds up when you start talking about 300, 400 people. And so we were like, well, there has to be a cheaper alternative with the same kind of functionality. And so it's hard to ask, hey, we need an enterprise license. And of course the company was like, well, how many do you want? Well, let's shoot for this. Because really you have no idea of how many Adobe licenses are out there, actually out there. How many people actually need that? So it's kind of hard to even dial in, a price from the company if you're off by 50, 100, 150 users, because again, you find out people don't actually need it. That's why I use that as a really good example, but it's the same thing with like our Microsoft licensing for like Windows and emails and stuff like that. That's another good example. When, again, departments start growing, that needs to grow as well. That costs money as well to get email addresses set up and whatnot. And a lot of it is, we go with HR. They let us know if someone leaves, so we can just kind of, okay, we will save the emails for whoever comes in, but then just take that license and reassign it. But as departments grow and, okay, this person's now part-time, well, that still leads to license because they still have to have access to email. Well, now we got to go and get more email licenses again. And so it's really kind of hard to juggle this back and forth. So those are just some of the things that, pop up to us that we're just like, well, I wish there was an easier way to do this. But like I said, either way, it doesn't bother me. We've worked with it and we've worked through it over the years, and we're still working through it. It was just when Commissioner Samuelson brought it up, we kind of let her know why and how we've been going through it, and it was brought up during the budget workshop as well. Ms. Kidd brought it up again, saying that we're trying to consolidate the best we can, and we're trying to do the best we can over the years. And like I said, it's gotten a lot better than it has been. But I'm just saying, if we do write a policy, we need to stick to it.
Need a what?
Stick to it if we write a policy. Because again, even if I go, hey, you have to let me know, I'm only as good as my leadership backing me. So again, if I say, hey, you need to do this, and they say, no, I don't, and then they go to the court and then you approve it, then again, what does that show them? Anyone could just run over me. Again, I'm just an appointed official. So the court would have to have my back on that. Thank you. Those are just my thoughts.
that's all I had on that, just to talk about it, unless you guys have any other input. Okay. So, since you're up, I'll just go to that one. So one of the things that Drew brought up at court, wasn't it? Or was it at court last time, was the need to update the AV equipment in this room, right? Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because the cost to do it is
A little under 100,000.
yeah, almost $100,000, and I don't know about the current equipment or why it's obsolete or what new equipment would do. Do we need new equipment? What if we don't do anything?
Well, I mean, obviously, if we don't do anything, it'll operate the way it is until it just completely fails. So it is this room right here, and it's these two rooms back here. They all have inputs into everything. So obviously, the EOC is here in case an actual emergency, nuclear power plant drills, anything of that nature. Which, of course, the EMC can speak on that. So all this technology now, outside of just the desktop computers that are on the side, has been actually in here since the building was initiated back in 2013. I can't think of what the sign says at the front, when it was actually built. So we are running up on 10 years. And of course, I guess my understanding, getting with the EMC, because again, when we brought this up, she's really the one that kind of runs everything in an emergency operation. And so we were asking her, well, what exactly, because again, sure, we can replace some TVs, whatever the case may be. But an AV stack to be able to project from different workstations to any of the TVs, to any of the rooms, in an actual emergency situation, what do you actually need to operate? And of course, that quote is the culmination of what she requested. I don't know if you want to go into any more detail into this.
I can talk a little bit. So this is actually kind of a culmination of two things. Some of the stuff I requested, some of the stuff my predecessor requested when we were working on various emergencies. The big thing though is the ability to project from any of the computers on the sides of the rooms or either of these two rooms behind us. Because during an emergency we have dispatch that comes in, we have our PIO that comes in, our mapping team comes in, and right now the way it works is the only place I can project from is up at the front. And that makes it kind of hard because I have to be logged into everything, but I'm not the one that's controlling it all. Dispatch is controlling a lot of the calls that are coming in, and mapping is controlling placing maps and placing where the accidents are occurring, things like that. So if everybody had the ability to push things to the screens, that would make things 10 times easier. Right now we're kind of juggling between which things are showing up on the screens. And it's, anybody that's been in here during an emergency can attest, it's a challenge.
So you're not talking about replacing this TV that's functioning correctly at this time?
We are. I mean, that is in the quote. It's to replace all. I mean, this goes back to, it's the same thing with when we had to do the in-row coolers and you were talking about the copper piping. It's the same concept. Again, when we go through this, we want to do it all because they are going to warranty it all. They're not going to warranty some of it and, or not. And so when it breaks, for a room like this, that is supposed to be on standby for something that's 24/7, 365 in the case of emergency, again, I want it all redone so I don't have to worry about it. And if it breaks, I have literal support in hours to get it back up working again. It's the same concept in the server room, in the server closet. That's over in that wall. Again, it's something that is used 24/7, 365. But I understand where you're coming from.
And let me add to this middle TV here is actually a smart board, and that's the same type of TV that's in the conference room and also in the EM planner room. And none of those actually function as a smart board currently. These TVs in here work if you plug something like an HDMI cable directly into them. They don't work as far as I can't turn the news on in there and I cannot watch what's happening live. If I have a computer to plug directly into it, I can pull stuff to it, but otherwise I can't. And that kind of goes both ways. Anything that's happening in here does not get pushed in there for us to be making plans on as well.
Okay, can you explain what a smart board is for,
I mean, it's just, if you look at that right there.
It's a fancy TV, that part really doesn't matter. I don't really care that it's a smart board. I just care that it works as a TV should, which is that I can access news outlets, things that I need, and that we can project what's in here to these two screens and vice versa. And right now we can't. Right now, unless you are plugging an HDMI cord into those TVs, nothing's going to show up on them.
Okay, I'm going to ask a stupid question because I'm kind of simple like that. But can we get a Roku or something and stick in that and get, Hulu News or something? I mean, instead of spending $100 grand, I mean, is that an option?
You just said that.
What?
You just said it works fine for a little while longer.
Well, I think it's something that I would want to dig into and kind of get some justification as far, $100 grand is, man, Yeah, my TV at home's smaller. I need to go get better glasses. So
Well,
I can
again,
see
the
her.
price isn't, so if you're just thinking the price is $100,000 for some TVs, you're vastly
that's-
wrong. It is
yeah.
the entire equipment stack and the ability to do a lot of what needs to be done and asking, that she's asking for.
Yeah, that, well, I mean, and that was very much part of that question. What all, you know.
I was gonna say, I think the quote for just the TVs and the ability to, the hookups was 10,000 or something like that. The bulk of the cost, again, is the entire equipment stack that's right over here.
Yeah, but out of everything that's in here currently, the only thing that's gonna be staying are those 2 cameras we've got there and its unit in there, because we bought that in 2019, 2020. So it's new, it does need to go, but everything else is all original from when it was put in.
So I think you answered one of my questions was, could we phase it in? Could we do part of it? Could we do those TVs in there, or, you know, just, could we break it up in a couple of years or something? And is there some way to?
I mean, in theory you could, but if one thing breaks and then we're like, hey, we need warranty support, it's up to us to try to figure out why this is broken and why it's not. I mean, that's the only problem you're gonna run into, is all this stuff is end of life. So
And are there other alternatives besides that?
AVI, the company you love.
Yeah. I only love them because it's taken them a year to
So
put the cameras
this is
in.
the other company.
And that's it? That's our only 2 choices?
We probably have some other choices.
We could probably look
Are gonna
more.
be probably pricey. Eye to Eye is luckily a very small company compared to AVI and all that, so generally we benefit from that, from the prices being quite a bit lower. We could reach out to AVI and get a quote, and I could try to find another company that could handle it, but they're currently who controls this room, and
Who is AVI?
Eye to
Eye
Eye.
to eye.
Oh, IDA.
Yeah, Eye to Eye currently has control of this room right now.
And so that, they're through DIR, which is the
State.
buy board equivalent for
It's the
technical
state.
stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So. Is there,
I mean, we'll do whatever you want us to do.
Uh-huh.
My thing, it's just like the indoor coolers. I'm bringing it up just to letting you know, but if it's actually an emergency and it breaks, again, told you so.
well, we just don't have time to ask all of these questions during a normal court, so.
Oh yeah, you can ask all the
Well-
questions you want.
Yeah, but it's.
But that's all
We
I'm
could.
doing. I'm just, again, that's the only reason we're bringing it up to do it, is if it's 10 years old, it's end of life, we really don't know, we could extend it out, you're right. Do we know how much longer? No, but right now we can't get any support on it, so if it breaks, it's on us.
So the support went out because,
Everything is 10 years old.
Yeah, so we've got support on the room and the routing and all that, but for the hardware, everything is way out of warranty. So like if something comes in and, you know, like one of the receivers breaks or something that's behind there, they'll come and they'll take care of that. But the major equipment, we rely generally on the warranty that comes mainly, well, from the manufacturer, and then usually we'll get a 2 or 3 on top of that from the vendor itself. But everything in there is long out of warranty.
any thoughts?
Well, I've been clinging to Windows 7 Professional, you know, and one by one, things are going away. And so I'm having to learn Windows 10. I had to learn it when I came in here, but I understand that. If that's what you're talking about. You can't, you know, I hate to say this, I still use it out at my cheese shop, but Windows 7. But
Yeah.
it's not, you know, a lot of stuff is not available on that particular.
I just don't want to be caught with our pants down, essentially, if there is actual, like, a massive emergency, because that's always when it happens. It's just like the bus. I know Jeff, I don't know where Jeff's at. I was going to say, same thing with like the 4th of July bus. Hey, we need to use it. And then next thing you know, I get a call like, hey, nothing's working because they didn't take the time to update everything. So again, would hate to be caught with our pants down. Hey, we actually need to spin this up and use it for a real emergency. only to be like, well, crap, it doesn't work, and or half of it doesn't work. And then you are all going to look at me and go, why doesn't it work, Drew? And I'm going to be like, I told you so. I don't know what to tell you. So that's why I bring it.
Do you have a comment, Tony?
I wanted to ask Drew something.
Yes, ma'am.
If this is all redone, how many years down the line do you think it's gonna have to all be redone again? Good question.
Generally, AV, we could get anywhere from, I'd say most for AV equipment, generally 6 to 8 years. It's like when we did the Justice Center, but the Justice Center was way overdue. Like all the courtrooms, when we redid all that, that was 12 or 13 years. And we couldn't get support at all. And that was the biggest issue we had.
Would that be in writing, that the warranty would be 8 years?
Are you asking for a warranty? I'm just saying general,
No, it's just
normal,
general
like general
lifespan.
lifespan of the equipment.
Okay.
Not like an actual warranty, but I can ask for a warranty, I guess.
You got a question, Ms. Lang?
Yes, I was wondering if you have looked at other industries, like I come from a video background, and there's several companies that offer cameras and projection and all that kind of stuff, and I'm thinking, you know, maybe you were going with the courtroom industry and not maybe the video background industry, because there's several production companies
Both
that,
AVI and IDI are both multimedia. They're not necessarily court specific. Usually, like IDI handles football stadiums and all that, and IDI usually handles their main thing is schools.
so have you looked at other companies other than ABI, like there's Avid, there's.
We do have one other that we usually look at there. I can never remember the name because they're very similar to AVI and it's not up there. Audiovisual Innovations. And the last time we quoted them for this room, they came in about 40, 50 grand higher. So we haven't for this juncture, but like I said, we definitely can. There's nothing stopping us from reaching out and getting alternative quotes, but I don't think we're gonna get lower than that.
Okay, because I know prices have come down versus going up, so, and the technology is going so
Huh,
fast.
okay.
that we might be able to look at other things.
Well, we're kind of limited to what's on DIR.
Yeah, it's really best to stick with DIR vendors for a host of reasons. One being that they have security requirements of all the vendors on there. But yeah, and it's all been competitively bid, so it's
So I
very
guess we're not
attractive for us to
limited
deal
to
with.
it, but if we went out to another
Yeah,
vendor
if you-
that wasn't on DIR, we would need to,
Actually competitively bid that project out.
and also require certain security.
Yeah, the state has done a massive amount of work to implement, what do they call that program? Where all their vendors had to certify to the security standards.
I know what you're talking about, but
For the state, yeah, I can't think of the name, but they've gone to a massive amount of work to ensure that all of the agencies that deal with them are more secure. So it's really a lot of the safety matter.
if you have a company, just shoot me an email that you want me to look into. If we could get them on a buy board or a DIR, that'd be fantastic.
Okay.
Okay. Well, the other thing I wanted to talk about, and we actually came up during the budget hearings, and then after going through it a little bit, actually it was Margaret and Jeff, when I asked them if they could share a copier, and they said they could. And when I was talking to Glenn about how do we redeploy that copier or reduce that lease, a question, he said, well, it'd probably be better to replace one of the ones that's in annex, at the Acton annex. So I talked to Amy, who's Constable Ellis's admin, and JP3, Stephen, and they seemed okay with sharing a copier there, but I see you're here, so has she spoken to you about that?
Yeah, she told me that you came by yesterday and talked with the judge to her about that, and yeah, the only issues that I have with it is some of the stuff that I print. She wrote this down, so let me read the top part. Is because we use e-file, some of the stuff has to be scanned in and Xerox through it so that it's searchable. And some of the stuff that I do is not, shouldn't be looked at from people that aren't, like I have to do a class right now that is through Sieges, so that my eyes can look at certain things, so that I can print it and use it in the field, and it's not to be looked at through other people. That would be the only thing that I would say we need to look into to make sure that that's okay.
Okay.
And the other is, our primary function is papers, and it really does, we benefit from having a computer scanner and printer in our office.
She has a, okay, doesn't she have a desktop one or no?
She has a desktop scanner,
Okay.
but again, we can't scan that stuff through there. It's gotta be scanned through what the big equipment we have so that it can be searchable later.
Okay. All right, so more to decide on.
I think that, I think that we need to look into it to make sure that stuff's okay. But if you're asking me now, I'm not okay with it. I prefer that my office remain my office and the stuff that I am accountable for just be
Okay.
underneath me.
Okay, so, just, this is, again, this isn't large expenses, but with things that we need to do to, if there's a way we can save money so that it could be deployed somewhere else, then that would be a good thing. So if there's any other, when just looking through here, I know that, I don't think there's anybody here from elections or ag extension. They're pretty close together and they both have printers. I know the elections office uses copiers, uses the copier a lot, especially during election season. And ag extension, they have booklets and things they need to use the printer for. And then just around the corner, the HR department has a copier. And then there's, this is all 3, 4. So Sean's here. Is this correct, Sean? There's 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 copiers for dispatch.
No, we got rid of 3 of them.
You did?
We only have 1 copier in dispatch right now.
Oh, it's on here, but, well, is it not? It's on this list, Glenn, does that, are you not, we're not paying for it?
I'd have to look into that.
We turned them back in, but I'll tell you that if we did, I'd be trying to keep them because if you don't have a printer next to someone taking a 911 call and then they're printing criminal history packets out and they have to go across the room to get it off the thing and then the phone rings, you want to get the stuff off the printer, you want to answer a 911 call.
Yeah.
But we're down to 1 printer.
Copier? Printer or
Printer,
copier?
copiers, everything.
Okay.
The scans, it prints, it emails, it faxes, it does all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
It's cool.
So, I'll just ask the departments if there's any way that you can consolidate. So in this building, until emergency management and the fire marshal were agreed to share one, there's sheriff, EOC, emergency management, fire marshal, and IT. So just in this building.
Can I just interject real quick, Commissioner? When you asked the fire marshal about sharing a printer copier, we work closely together and I love the idea of it, but I would like to highlight a couple of concerns I have. Primarily being, one, the emergency management printer copier is right here in the planner room, and it's the printer copier that we use for the EOC. When the EOC is activated, the fire marshal printer copier is in the fire marshal office. If we share, it's going to create a couple of challenges. One being, we're either going to have to come in and I have a code to get into the fire marshal office, but not everybody that's going to be in this EOC does. So during evacuations, specifically when it comes to nuclear stuff, when we're asking people to leave their homes, or to make contact with places, we get a call to radio stations, things like that. We have timed limits for those, and that comes from the minute that the notice hits our desk to as fast as we can get in there to scan things over. And if we're having to go down the hall, it's going to make it a lot harder to meet those limits.
Could it be relocated
To
somewhere that was more convenient?
Yeah, and I'm just highlighting a couple of issues. I'm happy to work with them. Our offices work close together all day, every day anyways. But I did want to at least highlight a couple of the concerns because one of us during an emergency is gonna have to be walking across the building when we're busy doing other things. And I don't speak for their office, but I can't imagine that they want us to leave their office door unlocked to allow anybody that's in the EOC to go in there and make copies and scan things during an emergency. And typically, if it's a fire, they're not here, they're out on scene. And so there's not gonna be anybody in the office, and it's a secure office.
I mean, could the copier be relocated so that?
Yeah, there's one in here and there's one in here, and they certainly could, and we may find something perfect.
Okay.
But I did at least want to
Yeah, if
mention
you would
it to
find out about that.
Yeah.
See if that will work. If it won't, then it won't. So, okay, so.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here thinking, this is something that I've said and repeated several times, and government's often way backwards. If a department head has money in their budget at the end of the year, it's ridiculous to go out and buy $5,000 worth of paper clips so you don't lose this money. I don't understand the whole mentality. If you have some money in your budget and you come to me at the end of the year and say, hey, I got $12,000 left over here that we didn't spend because we made some cuts, we did some things more efficiently, we didn't spend this $12,000, I'm way more likely to say, okay, you've demonstrated a fiscal responsibility here. You've demonstrated that you're not just, that you're looking out for the taxpayer. You're trying to save some money. And that goes a long way with me personally, saying this is a person that's really watching out for the taxpayer dollar. If they say they need something, that hits a little bit differently than somebody that spends every penny in their budget every year. I know that sometimes you have to, but I've heard in the past commissioners say, well, you cut that position this year, boy, don't come back to me asking for it next year when you realize you've made a mistake. No, do come back to me next year. If you're willing to show me that you've taken this step, you've jumped out here, you thought you could do it with less people, and you come back and go, I was wrong, we can't do it with less people, I need that person back. You've demonstrated a willingness to try there, and that's, like I said, I'm absolutely at that point looking at that like, okay, this is somebody that's trying to make the right decisions here. If they need that person back, give them the person back. But so often in government situations, it gets to that spend it up or lose it, and that's I don't know how to defeat that. But I just wanted to go on the record and say it's okay if you got a little money left over at the end of the year. We can roll that into fund balance and carry that back over. I don't have a problem with that. That shows some fiscal responsibility from each of the independent departments, and I think that's a good thing for the taxpayer. I'd like to see more of that.
Okay, so one of the things that is just going to be a statement because there's nothing we can do about it is we talked about back when COVID first started and our auditor set up it's called Fund 83. Well, I guess that was the second American Rescue Plan, and part of emergency management was moved over there, and part of the keeping up with the American Rescue Plan was moved over there. And we talked about that in one of the hearings, is that as the next few years we need to start, that came out of the general fund. So the salaries that are being paid out of the American Rescue Plan funds are gonna need to come back to the general fund because the American Rescue Plan funding is going to go away. So just a reminder that that needs to be part of the budget process over the next couple of years. And, you know, however much we move back this year, I think Becky made a statement in one of our hearings, is that she would have a plan to move part of it this year, part of it next year, and part of it the last year. So just a reminder that we need to do that.
So how many more years, we have 2 more years that the ARPA funds will take care of their salaries?
2026, isn't that when it's over?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, it's good.
By December 31st, 2026 is when all the funds have to be spent.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
And other than their salaries, what other salaries are paid from that? Do you know? Is there others?
It's my salary, the EM planner's salary, and part of Becky's salary that covers her auditing and controlling all the ARPA money.
Oh, okay.
And when we had talked, and I believe that Becky talked with you, I'm pretty sure in court, but her plan is to start moving one of our salaries over every year. And by the last year, none of our salaries will come out of ARPA, they will all come out of the general fund. But rather than dumping it all, waiting to the end and dumping all the salaries into the general fund, or doing it now, kind of to do it bit by bit to lessen the burden just a little bit.
Yeah,
So but just 2 salaries and
Yeah.
2 and a small.
like a bonus to
Yeah,
her for doing
something like
that,
that.
a stipend.
Yeah, the grant writer comes out of the general fund, so it's just April on my salary.
Okay. Yeah, so we just need to be aware of that because the general fund is gonna have to absorb that back in. We've kind of been, I hate that chair's there,
I
'cause
know.
I can't see you.
But it's just like adding 2 new employees. I mean, this county's already asked for, what, 30 employees this year, this budget year?
Well, that's what was asked for, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, it would basically be just asking for another employee, you know, in the budget.
Yeah, I mean, it was in the general fund, we moved it out, which left some room in the general fund to do
Right,
other things.
I get it.
And now we need to move it back. So,
But in 25 and 26.
yeah, part of it, I think she's gonna do part of it this year, or we will, if we approve it. And so speaking of that, I've heard both things, and I've been, you know, last year and the year before when I was just listening in court, when it came to elected officials' salaries, it's either all or nothing. And so I looked up the statute, and I don't think that's, I mean, you guys are more familiar with it than I am, but I don't think that's true. If we, as I think Commissioner Wilson suggested, if we don't take an increase, that doesn't mean that no elected officials get an increase. Here, you can read what it says, but we could do, you know, if we lead by example and say, we're willing to not take an increase, but others.
Can I say something? I brought that up one year for myself, and the response was, well, you're an elected official, it's not really your salary, it's a position that you're occupying. And so the next person that gets elected, say, you know, I quit or whatever, the next county clerk, if I don't take a higher salary, if I don't go along with all the elected officials, I'll be putting that person at a disadvantage because they won't have the same salary as what everyone else got. You see what I'm saying?
No.
Okay, if I take a lesser salary and then I quit, then the new person will have the lesser salary.
For that budget year.
Yes. Does that make
I mean,
sense?
I have to read that again.
We, in years past, there's been elected officials that we've stood up and said, we won't take a raise if you'll take care of our employees.
Yeah.
Right.
There's nothing in the law that says you can't do that.
Well, that's
And
the
even
way.
still, if it's in that budget year and it stays that way and one department or several departments are less than, and a new person comes in as elected official, well, you knew what it was when you ran for it.
Right.
You know,
And
there's not an all or nothing thing, that, you know, on how that goes, because the court sets what the salaries and sets the budget. on what the use of the tax dollars are.
Well, that's the way I read it, and
That's exactly
because
right.
I
That's why
was-
you have
I
some
was-
counties where you have people making different things and different amounts.
Yeah, so if, you know, as whoever, whichever one of you said, to take care of the
That's exactly right. Take care of the
employees,
That's what it's about.
that's something we can do, is we can decide. And I think several of us stated it in the hearing that we were okay with, or advocate not to have increases for the commissioners, but, but then someone said, well, if we don't do that, then no elected official gets raised. I went, well, where does it say that? And so I looked it up and it doesn't say that, so, at least that's the way I read it. How do you
Yeah,
read
no,
it?
I think that that's kind of been just a tradition passed on kind of thing, so. I think it's
I'm not
just-
sure it doesn't say it either, so
Okay.
this language is typical. You know, I would have to study this language, believe me,
Okay,
because it's kind of like,
just go ahead, you wanna read it?
yeah, it says each year the Commissioners Court shall set the salary, expenses, and other allowances of elected county or precinct officers. The Commissioners Court shall set the items at a regular meeting of the court during the regular budget hearing and adoption proceedings. Let's see, down, skipping to C, because B is just some timelines. Before filing the annual budget with the county clerk, the Commissioners Court shall give written notice to each elected county and precinct officer of the officer's salary and personal expenses to be included in the budget.
That sounds to me like each means they could all be different.
That is correct. It's done that way in many counties.
Well, I'm gonna do my usual lawyer response to that and say I'm not sure,
Okay.
based on what I
It
did.
depends.
I'd have to do some more research,
Okay. Well, I just wanted to that out, so.
but good point.
So, okay, so one of the things that I wanted to talk about was, when I was first elected, probably starting the second or third week in January, I started meeting with the sheriff's department and going over, getting to know all the different parts of the sheriff's department and what they do, and, met, is Sean still here?
You just got called.
Oh, okay. And met with Sean, and I was just going through every line item, and they were telling me about the contract with the city for dispatch. And so I looked at that, pulled the contract, and I was like, this contract hasn't been changed since it was created. And there's no mechanism to change it as far as within it, as it was written. There was no cost of living increase or any type of recognition for the cost of what it takes to run the dispatch office, and the number of calls that we support for the city. So I just, over time, I looked into it and talked about different options and looked at the number of calls that are generated, the percent of calls that are hood, fire, and city, and approached the city manager and said, hey, I noticed this is, you guys that know me so far know that when I see something that looks odd, I ask questions. And so I asked about it. I said, this doesn't take into account the change, because what the contract says is that the city was paying to offset the cost of having dispatchers for the city to answer the city calls. And so, so I checked with Melissa, and the cost has gone up quite a bit since 2016. So when I talked to the city manager, he said, that while that wasn't something that he would like, if there was something reasonable, he might be open to it. So I came up with what I thought was reasonable. Now you all have a copy of it, because he sent it to you all. And my plan is to talk about it at a court meeting. But since we have this workshop, just throw it out there. If there's no appetite for doing anything with it, and I'm the only one that thought it was odd that it was put in place to offset the cost of the dispatchers for the city, but the cost has gone up about $17,000 per dispatcher since 2016. So my proposal was to add $35,000 to that contract. If that's not something we want to do, or no one else thinks that's a good idea, then it's not, we'll do something else. But I think we have kind of three choices: do nothing, make a modification, well, I guess two things: make the modification that I proposed, or make some other kind of modification, or just do nothing.
Well, what I read, or what I inferred from the email that Mr. Kaufman sent, is that if we do anything, we need to do it next year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that we got plenty of time to explore that, because I think his major bone of contention was that he felt like it was abrupt to try to do something right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you agree, or?
Yes, and I have been trying to get on his calendar for about 3 months, so.
Yeah, I understand. Have you got I mean, did you read that email?
Yeah, no, that's what I got out of that too, was, even though it was the exact same language as the existing contract, I think that there was some issue with some of that, and then, yeah, it was
The timing.
we're working through budgets. This is kind of a new wrench thrown in there, and I'd rather have a little time to work on that and digest it later.
That would be my thought. Not that we're making any decisions here, but, my thought would be, if that's the upsetting part to the city, is it's just abrupt, let's, consider talking to them and seeing what we can do next time. Kind of my thoughts. Because it doesn't take much sometimes to ruffle a feather,
Yeah. So, all right, well, okay. So, the last part really was to just look at some of the things that are in the revenue budget. And Becky unfortunately had to go home sick, but two things that kind of stood out to me as I was looking through where we currently are in the revenue budget is that our sales tax, find it. Here we go, yeah. What she has budgeted this year for sales tax was $4.5 million. And through July 11th, we're at a little bit over $4 million. So we still have July, August, and September. So just some thoughts on where you guys think we ought to give some direction to her on where to set the sales tax. So that's one question.
Well, I can certainly give some history on that part. At least traditionally, up until last year, there was a $3.6 or $3.9 million number put in that slot, and we have nearly always collected quite a bit more than that. And I think it's something that Becky and I have debated over the years, underestimating the sales tax. So I think it's a good topic. Of course, it has been brought up. Last year she took it to 4.1, or we did, the court did. And this year she's got an estimate of 4.5, and we're likely to get 5.5, something like that. But the city's budget, or the city's revenue, is primarily from sales tax. The county's revenue is primarily from ad valorem tax. But sales tax is a component of our revenue. And I guess the struggle I have with grossly underestimating how much sales tax we're going to come in with, and I'm not saying, I'm not placing any type of culpability on anybody, I'm just saying this is her, the way she does the accounting on this. The problem it does is it leaves us with limited places we can put the money after it comes in. It's not a kind of money that if we've got let's say we've got a 1.7 million overage, there's only very limited places where that overage can go. And so my argument to Becky has been if we underestimate it too much, that we're basically building up a savings account. And if we had it go, and it's an allocated, so if we were closer to the draw on how much to add it into our budget, then we can use it, for our entire budget, which offsets the amount of, or the percentage that we have to come in with as your tax rate. So it's a very interesting subject to me, of course, because you can't predict how much you're going to get. But the way things are going, you can predict that it's probably going to continue to go up, right? Unless we just completely,
Unless there's a pandemic again.
right. And even with the pandemic, it went up.
Did it?
Yeah.
Because people went out and bought toilet paper. They bought
and
$5 million
garden
worth of toilet paper, so.
Lowe's had their best, I don't know now, but then they had a record month in April of 2020.
That's because they were essential.
Yeah, because they,
Well, everybody's sitting around the house going, well, I guess it's time to paint the walls and do something. So they went to Lowe's and bought stuff to do that.
so kind of, you're thinking along the same lines as I was, is that if we restrict, we're kind of tying our hands somewhat if we underestimate this, because that makes it so that we don't have those funds to put into salaries or other things, that equipment or whatever. And then when it comes in, and it's two months delayed, so we won't know what the October or the September 30th total will be until December. And then I think, unless there's others, what she said in court was it's either pay down debt or it goes into retirement, are the two things you can do, which means that we can't use it to hire another person or buy AV equipment for this room.
So if we underestimate it, that money can only be used, it's still sales tax, we can't use it how we want to.
Well, yeah, the state only allows the two options,
It's used however you want to.
When it's not budgeted.
right, yes, if it's budgeted, you could use it anyway. Anyway, the budget. If you say we think we're gonna get 5 million and you get 6, that $1 million can only be spent either to pay down debt or to pay down future obligation in the retirement.
Oh, okay,
So,
yeah, I get it.
So it's kind of that balancing of, well, if we estimate closer to what it ends up being, then that money is available to buy equipment or squad, cars or whatever we need to do. But if we're restricting ourselves by keeping it low, because then it can only be for those two things. So, and if it's the same, I've been kind of tracking it over the year, and of course, you never know what's going to happen in August, the rest of July, August, or September, but we're likely to be somewhere close to 6 million if we stay at the same run rate we've been for the first 9 months of the year.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's, what do you I know Becky's argument is you don't want to go too much,
Yeah.
and I agree with that too, but I think going grossly under is, of course, we disagree on how much we should have as a reserve too. And she's more into having 6 or 7 months operating expenses in reserve, and I'm, according to the government standards I've looked at on accounting, about 3 months is plenty. So, 3 or 4 months. So those are just policy issues that there could be a difference of opinion on, but it certainly warrants a discussion, because if she's got a number plugged in here now, $4.5 million for sales tax
For the coming budget?
for the coming budget, and If she,
No, it's
That was
five.
for this year.
It's 5.
5 million, okay, I'm looking at the wrong line. She's budgeted 5 years, 5 million for the coming budget. But if it's gonna be closer to 6, the 6 would be for this year.
Right.
So I'm trying to, let's go back to this year, to compare apples to apples. She's got $4.5 million for this year, that ends September the 30th. And you're saying, based on the estimates you've done, we should come in about 6 million, which is $1.5 million under estimated. If she had factored 5 million in last year, let's say, and we got 6 million in, that other 500,000 would go into the budget instead of into surplus. That has to be, and we've taken the debt. We're in good shape on debt. So if we end up with a big surplus and we don't have much debt to pay off, then that create what? Now what do we do? Oh, we put it in retirement. Well, that doesn't sound very good, does it?
I don't know.
Well, that's a contention I've got with the appraisal district, because then you run the risk of over or underinflating it on purpose, because they do the same thing. They underestimate. The money comes in, they go, oh, we can only put it in retirement now, and you kind of go, that's just me, maybe.
Yeah, and so I didn't understand that, because when I looked at the budget, when I look at every single department expense, there's a line item here for every department for retirement. So I was like, okay, if we're paying retirement out of the budget, every payroll, why do we have to then put another $1 million to that? I didn't get it. So I met with Melissa, and she explained that it's because of cost of living raises that were granted by prior courts that take 15 years to pay off. And then if you do 2 in a row or 3 in a row, that's 15 years, and not added on, but adds another year every time, right, for the year. So we're almost done with that, though. I mean, there's not much left of the, how do you say that, unfunded cost of living raises that were done by prior courts. So we don't have much left on that. So I don't know. So that's a good question. The other one that's looks to be is going to need to change, and I didn't bring that report, so you might have to look at it, is interest. As interest she had budgeted at 100,000, and through July we're at 780,000, almost 781. And you guys know why that is, right? Because interest rates have gone up a lot since the last year. I mean, we spent so long with 0 to 1 to 2% interest that you didn't expect to have any interest income. But this year, starting probably mid-year last year, and this year that's changed a lot.
So do you have an understanding of if you've got an overage in that?
I don't know what happens to it. Do you?
I don't know,
I think that's just general fund.
back in general.
Yeah, what did you say that number?
Right on our July 11th revenue report, it's $780,908. So almost $800,000.
And that's year to date, fiscal year to date?
Fiscal activity, yeah. So that's almost, $700,000 that was unexpected and that is in our budget now. So I just think if we make those, things change over time, and I don't have any hard feelings or bad things to say about why it was set at 100,000, because she had no idea that the Fed was gonna raise interest rates every month for 7 months in a row or whatever it's been. So I guess now is, what is the consensus on? Is it going to go back down to 2 during the next fiscal year? And so if we set it at some other higher number, and then interest rates, the Fed starts lowering interest rates?
It's a little risky to
And that's what
climate to rely on. So that's, yeah, it's kind of like fuel prices. Where are you on that? That's kind of a guess at best, so.
Yeah, I would be inclined to say that's a one that's.
Crystal ball,
Mm.
yeah. that
The
one.
sales tax, I think, is more of a,
Still,
I think you got a little bit more surety there than you do with the interest.
yeah, because they're, I mean, we could fall into a recession and interest rates could fall back to 2% in a few months. We're trying to set this in August or September, just take effect in October for a year out, so. Well, that was everything that's on my list. I didn't know if y'all had things that you wanted to talk about.
Well, the only comment, how about, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, no.
No, I'm good, so you go right ahead.
So as I mentioned a little while ago, that the appraisal district is having their budget. And they're wanting to add a couple of people. After the interim director said they didn't need more people, which is, I'm gonna go out there just to find out why that's, what the response on that is. But we've been assured by Richard Petrie that on July 25th, we'll get all of our numbers from the appraisal district. And one thing that's always caused me grief, or a cause for consternation about the way we do the budget, is that we're doing a budget before we know what kind of revenue we got. And, it seems like, in real business, you gotta know what kind of money you got coming in to figure out what your budget's gonna be. But whatever, that's the way it's gonna be. So we're sitting here talking about all these budget concepts and numbers, and at the end of the day, we're not gonna know till we get all the appraisal district's number on July 25th. And I know that we have we're constrained by the state on how much, let's say the budget that we come up with, and we're just talking budget, we haven't passed on one yet, ends up that we have to raise the tax rate a significant amount. If it goes over, and I don't know how much we've got rolled over from last year, I know it's 3.5%, you gotta for 1 year, but you can go back how many?
You can go back 3 years.
So we've accumulated some where we may have a 8% or 7%.
Well, it's not actually a percent, it's a hard number. Like back 3 years ago, it was X dollars. So it's not a percentage, it's a number of dollars that you can go, that you're kind of building that up. So,
Yeah. So if it turns out that we have to plug in a rate that goes beyond that, whatever that number is, to make the budget that we've kind of ironed out, at least preliminarily, we may not be able to do it without having an election. And then you've got a real short window. It's a huge problem to try to have that election and have it all done by the mid-September actually, and let the voters decide, because you need more than the state's allotted amount of potential increase in the rate. So it's at least when we get the numbers in July, on July 25th, and then we'll have some hard numbers we can work with, and there may be all kinds of adjustments we're going to have to do. So I guess that's just a comment.
yeah, and the rate will go down. I mean, the multiplier that we'll use will go down. Our valuation last year countywide was right at $10 billion. This year, it's projected to be around 11.5. So there's basically an additional 15% of valuation that's gone, increased across the county. So to get to that, to get to the 103%, your rate has to drop, because this number's gone up. that equation has to balance. I'm really thinking about trying to sit down and do a couple of videos on this or something to kind of get down in there and explain that, because it's a pretty difficult concept to understand. But basically, whenever the values go up, you've got to be back at this number over here, and the only way to do that was, if your values are here this year, your rate's here, and you come out with this, if your values go up here, your rate has to come down here to come up with that same number.
Yeah, so I just put it in A times B equals C. So if A, so the government says, or the state says that C can't be more than 3% more than it was last year. So if A goes up, B has to go down so that C is no more than 3%.
And here's the only caveat to that. They've got something they call the no new revenue rate, which is not any of that. And that's what's frustrating, because the no new revenue rate, generally, if the values are trending upward like they do here, the no new revenue rate is gonna mean if your mortgage company's not taking out all your taxes and stuff, the average person that lives in a house doesn't they just say, uh-oh, my payment went up $40 or whatever. But like, I pay my taxes, I go down there and write them a check and I can see it. The no new revenue rate could potentially mean you're gonna pay more dollars out of your pocket. And so, it's always a juggling act, because what I'm looking for is, if I paid $1,000, and I'm using that as a round number for example, last year for my taxes, what do we have to get to pay, for me to pay $1,000 this year? And it's gonna be under that no new revenue rate. So, which is our task is to, we're gonna be able to sit here and say, yeah, we lowered your rate. Well, you're still gonna pay more money if we don't lower it enough. So, and we're not gonna know totally until the appraisal district sends us the numbers on a 33-page worksheet that nobody can understand. They're just like the IRS. And it should be just like Commissioner Samuelson said, it should be A times B equals C, and you just move it, it's not, it should be that simple.
I think on the
It's like
33rd
a-
page it gets that way,
Yeah.
but it's the 32 in front of that says, well, this $3 over here don't count. So you subtract that out, and then over here is this and that, and
It's really like a tax form.
It
I mean,
really
it
is.
is, like all the 1040 and all the accompanying forms, it's pretty, go look on, column 7C and move that number over here and then add this down. I mean, it's pretty much like a tax form.
Yes, sir.
Who decides that date? Is that a decision that they make, that they're gonna do it on the 25th? It seems like we're alluding to that we could get it sooner, but they don't give it to us sooner?
That's statutory.
That's statutory. So
And
they-
see, the last couple of years,
That's what I was.
they've been a little bit with the chief appraiser that just left. There's been a little problem getting it on the dead date it's supposed to be getting. So the 25th is,
That's the deadline.
yes, sir.
So they're waiting till the deadline.
Well, it could be that they're waiting till the deadline, or it could be that they're gonna be,
I think they're cramming to get to the deadline.
Yeah.
More than-
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still having appraisal, people coming in and objecting to their appraisal. So they're still, it's still a moving target. In fact, I got one next week I gotta go to, I'm probably gonna lose, but, they haven't resolved all the protests that and until they get all that done, they're not gonna be able to nail down a sum certain on it. And there still may be a float factor there, because some people are gonna appeal it to district court or what have you.
Does anybody, elected or county employees have any questions or comments?
You got any questions there, Mr. Mills?
I was just here in case you had executive session. I could have skipped the whole thing if you didn't
Yeah.
have that.
No? Sheriff Dees, do you have any?
Well, if there's no other,
Oh, can we set another, try to set a date when everyone will be here? Because we're gonna have to go through this again. I mean, we're gonna have to have, numbers to go through, so. After the 27th, I guess, or the 25th, did you say? What day?
25th is the designated date for the appraisal district to get stuff to us. I would recommend to get with Becky on that, and we can circulate some dates.
Okay.
I mean, I'm open, so that's what we're here to do, is get the budget done, so.
Yeah, she has to have something published, a proposed budget by, what is it, August the 8th or something like that? It's pretty soon. We have court on the 25th, and then our next court is on the 8th, so.
Do you have a deadline to get this done?
Yes.
What is that deadline?
She has to have a proposed budget on the web at the beginning of August, but I don't know the exact date. It's the 8th or the 10th or something like that.
And when we get the numbers from the appraisal district, they will send us a proposed, probably 2 or 3 different rates, whatever she's asked for, and that has to be published in the paper. There's a timeline on all that.
Yeah, all this stuff, I think, kind of works backwards. Everything has to be in place at the end of September so that you can start in October, but then you have to have public notices and things that drop in line as we approach that date. So you kind of go to October 1 and work backwards. And it's,
So y'all will have a tax rate by October 1st?
Oh,
actually, we should have one on the 25th. Something to start looking at and talking about from the appraisal district. That's.
No, I was just wondering when that deadline is that y'all will set the tax rate. What day is that? October 1st?
Traditionally we get it done by the end of August, first part of September.
I would suggest not the end of August this year. I think that is.
Not the end of August.
Yeah, no, we need to be into September or something instead of.
We did it at the end of August last year because there were some other constraints that.
Yeah, we went first and other counties around us beat us up over it.
Oh.
We went in and started looking at our numbers and said, oh, we can do that. And I think that.
Well, the last court in September is September 26th, is the second court. So.
Well, if you wait till the last one, you may.
Yeah.
You disagree on the September 26th.
Yeah.
Trouble, so.
I mean, there's also, you can call a special meeting, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, you don't have a whole lot of time left after.
No, I mean, if you wanted to do it, not the 12th, but not as late as the 26th, it could be a special meeting the week of the 18th of September if we needed more time than on the 12th. But I mean, it's hard to say when we don't really know the status of the current budget, where we are. I know that there was a lot of work left to do, but. Okay, well, I'll just ask Brenda to try and find something after the 25th. Or the week of August 31st, July 31st. Work for you.
Anybody else have a burning desire to throw something in here before we adjourn? All right, well, it's 2:28 p.m. and I call this meeting adjourned.